Hey bestie, today we're going to chat about food noise, and I want you to know that food noise isn't the villain, but of course Ozempic wants us to think that it is. Today what we're going to talk about might feel a bit different, but bear with me. I want you to know that that noise in your head about food, it's not all bad. It could actually be your body just doing its job. And so we're going to talk about food noise. We're going to talk about what it actually is, where that term came from, and why an entire industry is trying to make you scared of it. So if you've ever spiraled out thinking about your next meal or called yourself broken from not being able to switch off from those food thoughts or those urges to eat, or maybe you've considered or are currently using GLP-1s because of that food noise, then this episode is going to be super helpful. So I'll break it down. We'll talk about what it is, what it's not, the parts of food noise that, yep, we definitely want to tackle, and the parts of just being human that the diet culture industry has convinced us is something that needs to be medicated, and how that is actually keeping you stuck. So I'm going to walk you through this, and I'm going to give you a way to tell the difference between food noise that's healthy and food noise that we want to work on. So let's go ahead and let's talk about it.
Hey gals, welcome back to Binge Free Bestie, the podcast where we ditch diets, break free from binge and emotional eating, and finally make peace with food and our bodies. I'm your host, Nick Garbedia. I'm a registered therapist who's been there herself. Binge eating, body shame, the whole exhausting cycle. I know it inside out. But here's the good news. Food freedom is totally possible, and my food freedom method is how you will get there. Every week on the potty, I'm going to be sharing real evidence-based tools from my therapy practice and my own recovery to help you to break up with binge and emotional eating and build a calmer, more empowered relationship with food. So, if you're done with the diet cycle and you're ready to reclaim your energy, your confidence, and your life, then you're in the right place.
So today, as I said, we are talking about food noise, and I'm sure you've heard the term because it's absolutely bloody everywhere right now, right? I mean, it's on our socials, it's in every single Ozempic ad or piece of marketing we can see about GLP-1s. People are talking about it online so much. Even Oprah, she did this whole special on it. So I have some thoughts about food noise, and strap in because they may be a little bit different from what you've been hearing so far. So, starting off, let's just say what the F is food noise. Anyway, I know that you will have experienced it and lived it, so you know what it is. But the actual definition of food noise that most people agree on is that it's this really persistent thoughts about food. And they're thoughts that feel unwanted or distressing, and they're generally getting in the way of your life. That definitely exists, and I'm not here to tell you that never happens. This episode is not about convincing you that food noise is not real, because it is. Certainly is real. I've lived with that. I've struggled with that for over a decade, so it's real. But what has been bugging me is the way the term is being used right now. And so many different experiences, some of them really normal, human, healthy things, are being lumped in with other aspects that are less helpful or even harmful. And we definitely want to tackle that. But it's all been lumped up together as one big problem, as one thing that's wrong with you, as something that we need to medicate or we need to push down into silence. And that is my problem. Food noise is not always something that you need to fear. So, what is the part that I'm saying you don't need to fear? Physical hunger. Okay, that is the aspect of food noise that we really want to keep. So, sometimes food noise is being labeled as any time that you're thinking about food. But the reality is, sometimes when we're thinking about food, it's our body trying to communicate with us, send us a signal saying, hey, it's time to eat. I'm hungry, man. Right? So our body tells us it's time to eat, and that it's time for some more sustenance in many different ways. And all of our bodies give us unique cues. So Maybe for you, it's time to eat when you have a little drop in your energy or some brain fog. Maybe it's you find yourself kind of like in the kitchen, or maybe it's just more thoughts about food or an increase in appetite. The obvious one is the tummy rumble, but the way that our body communicates to us is so much wider than just that gnawing feeling in your tummy. Okay. And anytime that your body lets you know that it's time to eat, that's awesome. That's a really, really good sign. We want to hear that because when we hear that, we can honor it, right? It stops us from going into restriction. It means that we're eating enough, it means that we're staying satiated throughout our day. We want to get that food noise, i.e., a signal from our body saying it's time for the next meal. That's how we're going to stay well. That's how we're going to avoid slipping into that semi starvation mode or slipping into restriction and swinging hard into a binge later. So it's really, really helpful when our bodies supports us and tells us it's time to eat. Okay? So that's what I don't want you to fear hunger cues. I don't want you to fear your body talking to you. It is okay to feel hungry. Okay? But this thing that we see being spoken about so much at the moment, this food noise, can be a couple of other things that actually I do want to support you to get out of your life. And one thing that is getting lumped into this whole like food noise definition is our old friend, diet culture Doris, right? I talked about this in last week's episode. And if you haven't tuned into that one yet, go back and listen to it after this because it's going to be really helpful alongside this week's chat. If you haven't listened to it yet, essentially, diet culture Doris is this fun little name that I give to kind of tease the diet culture industry a bit and also to create some space between you and your highest, healthiest self and the diet voice in your head. So I just call her Doris because you can kind of snap back whenever that voice comes into your head and be like, shush, Doris. Like, I've heard this one today. Carbs are not the devil. Thank you. You know? So Doris is that voice that's probably been in your head for years. And it's the one that tells you that you've eaten too much, you're so nasty, you shouldn't eat that, you suck for even wanting that, you can't have two types of carbs in one day. Okay, that voice in your head is not helpful. It's not you. It's also definitely what I feel like fits into the category of food noise and something that we want to tackle because that voice makes you feel guilt and makes you feel shame. It pushes you into things like dieting. It pushes you into skipping meals, into restriction. And of course, we know that when we do that, we eventually swing into binge eating. So we do want to tackle Doris and we do want to turn down the volume on Doris. So head after this episode, if you haven't already, listen to last week's because I do give you a really good tool. It's called the Diet Culture Thought Detox, and it's how you can start to turn down that volume on Doris. So that's one aspect of food noise that, yeah, wholeheartedly agree, let's annihilate Doris. Another piece of you, or a part of you, or a part of your experience that's been lumped up with food noise is something I like to call your binge brain. Your binge brain. And that shows up when you've been listening for Doris for too long. Okay. So, like I said before, Doris has been there. She's been putting you down, making you feel ashamed of yourself, making you feel like a failure. And so, what happens is we respond to that by maybe eating less, cutting foods out of our diets, beating ourselves up. And we can end up saying, for example, like, okay, I'm never eating chips again, or I'm never eating chocolate again. But what happens is that food then goes up on a pedestal because you've decided it's bad, it's off limits. It could be chocolate, could be a whole food groups like carbs or sugar or just junk food or whatever it is for you. And you just don't give yourself permission to eat those like any other food. What happens is that the brain starts to fixate on those foods on the pedestal. They become our forbidden foods, right? And when something becomes forbidden, we have the forbidden fruit effect, which is when, as I said, we fixate. We get this tunnel vision on that one thing. And this is what is being called food noise right now. So this will sound familiar. And that is going to get louder and louder until eventually something's going to happen. Life throws you a curveball, you have a wobbly day, bad body image day, something stressful happens at work, and you crack. And maybe in this instance, your binge brain pops up and says, just have the freaking chocolate. Just have it. I'll let myself have one row of chocolate. You're still trying to restrict it in a way. Because you're like, I'm going to have one row and one row only. And I suck for eating this row, but I'm going to do it anyway. I give up. You have the one row, and then you have two rows. And then you're like, well, I've really screwed it up now. No surprise. Here I go again. Diet culture Doris pops up, starts bullying you as well. Oh, typical. This happens every time. You can't control yourself. And so you eat the whole block, right? It's like very black and white approach. And you're like, well, I tried to have one row, felt terrible about it because I have so many food rules. Now I've eaten the whole block because it has to be one way or the other. I can't have it or I'm just going to feel like a failure and eat the whole damn thing. So diet culture has taken all of these things that I've just talked about, that physical hunger cues, the diet voice that has conditioned you and your binge brain to feel guilty and to feel out of control and to have these strong, overpowering urges, and it's mashed them all together into this one really scary sounding phrase. And then quite conveniently, this is the nasty part, quite conveniently, diet culture has the solution, doesn't it? As always, it says, here's the problem. It's you in your body and your brain. And here's the solution, a medication that is being heavily marketed to turn off that noise. It's really interesting to me because I assumed, before I did the research for this episode, I assumed that given that diet culture and these drug companies are heavily using the term food noise to market their products, I thought that it must have been them who invented the term. But I'm totally wrong. I was totally wrong. I mean, you might have thought the same thing. I did a deep dive to see, when did food noise even pop up? Because I definitely have noticed it in the past few years. But prior to that, I never heard of food noise before. I don't know about you, but when's the last time or when's the first time that you heard about food noise? It really was for me around the same time as GLP-1s popped onto the market. I started seeing this food noise, and I'm an eating disorder therapist. So interesting, right? It wasn't them though. It was patients, eating disorder patients, who came up with this phrase themselves. So it was ordinary people like us who were just trying to find a way to describe their struggle. So they were just trying to find language to describe to the clinicians who were supporting them what this constant struggle with food sounded like in their heads. And then, of course, it started being shared around and was picked up on social media, and the New York Times ran a piece on it. And then what happened was Oprah, she did this big weight loss special in early 2024. She was using GLP-1s, and she talked about how using this medication turned down her food noise. And that's kind of when it just really exploded and took off. So what happened was there was this real human patient experience that essentially went viral. And the weight loss industry watched this and saw people resonating and saw people's pain and saw people's struggle. And they were like, yeah, we can definitely work with this. Let's take it. Let's run with it. Let's put it into our messaging. Let's put it into our advertising. And so Novo Nordisk, which is the company behind Ozempic and Wegovy, they actually only started using the word food noise in their marketing in 2025, so last year. And that was after, all of this stuff with Oprah and the patients. And so, yeah, they didn't invent it. Big Pharma did not invent this piece of language or this definition, but they did watch this real lived experience go viral and turned it into a sales funnel, which I feel like is even more sneaky than marketing it. Like they took something that people really were suffering with and then created something that they said was a fix, which of course they always do. And yes, GLP-1s, we know if you take a GLP-1, your appetite goes down, your food noise does go down. The food noise we talked about before, where it's that voice in your head, that obsession, the food on a pedestal. That's because you're just not getting the same reward when you are eating. You're not getting the same dopamine released. You have no appetite and you can't hear your body's hunger and fullness cues. So, what was happening is people were like, yes, it does get rid of my food noise. It does work. I am losing weight. But is that all good? Is that all a good thing? Because when we come off the GLP ones, and I've talked about this in so many episodes, and so don't get me wrong, my point of view on GLP ones is I don't want anyone to feel ashamed or ostracized from my world and my community or me because they're considering them or they are using them. I want you to know that you're so welcome and you're so safe with me. I understand where that desire comes from of wanting that release and relief, right? Or that peace and quiet because you've probably been struggling with it for a lifetime. And it does turn down all of that stuff. However, and so I say to people, I understand. Like I have so much love and compassion for you, and there's no judgment from me at all. But I just want everyone to be informed about how this like diet culture machine works and what happens if you decide to come off of them. Because when you do come off of these injectables, your appetite comes back with an absolute vengeance over time. It's a short span of time though. So your appetite comes back. So those hunger, fullness cues switch back on. And so does usually diet culture Doris. And she comes back, wow, louder than ever. Because what happens when you come off these drugs, the cues come back on, maybe you start eating a little more. That a lot of people I'm working with, so a lot of people in the breakup have used GLP-1s before, or they might even still be using them, or and definitely have considered them. And so what happens is when you come off of them, you have already been in this state of restriction, right? You haven't been eating as much. You haven't been having to tackle this diet voice. You haven't been living with that binge brain anymore. And when it starts creeping back in because the medication starts to withdraw from your body, that is so freaking scary. And so many of the women that I work with are pushed into this state of anxiety and fear of weight regain and fear of getting back to where they were. They've probably lost some weight and now they're sitting here going, oh my God, my hunger cues are back on. They're afraid of hunger. They're afraid they're going to lose control like they used to in the past. They have this panic, this fight or flight response to their own body, just trying to communicate that, hey, it's time to eat, right? That is so sad. And I don't want you to fear your body. And what's happening is people coming off the GLP ones, having this fear and being like, hey, I need to maintain this weight loss. So they go on some sort of restrictive diet. Or they're saying, I'm just in maintenance mode, like I'm just trying to be healthy. But what they're doing is their old school stuff they did before, where it's, so I'm just eating a little less carbs, or I'm moving more and I'm not eating sugar. So you've gone back into restriction. And as I said before, what happens is when we go into restriction, you can only take that for so long before the food noise gets louder, louder, louder. You crack and you swing into binging again. And so it's super sad and very distressing for these women because they invested so much in this medication, time, energy, finances, hope. They maybe saw results that they had been waiting for years or even decades in in terms of weight loss and just like releasing that struggle with food, they start to feel confident. They come off the meds, and then everything comes back with this vengeance because whilst they were on the meds, they didn't spend that time working on their relationship with food and eating and their body. And so they haven't got a toolkit there to regulate themselves, to know how to nourish their bodies, to know how to tackle diet culture Doris and that diet voice. And so they start swinging back to the way things were before. And so my point of view as an eating disorder therapist, as a woman who binged ate for a decade, as a woman who's done every diet under the sun, and as a woman who has recovered from that and found peace and calm and confidence and freedom with food, if you're on a GLP-1, I always welcome you into my space and invite you to work with me because you can use these if you want to lose weight, but it's not going to be sustainable once you come off if you haven't done that mindset and behavioral work that needs to be done. And I just think it's a waste of time me telling anybody to not use them or not consider them because they're just so attractive. And I don't want you to feel shamed or blamed or like you're not welcome in my space because you haven't thought about it. Because I know why you're thinking about it. It's because of diet culture. It's because that lifetime of a struggle. But I just want you to know that I am here for you, that if you do decide to use them, if you're using them, come and do this piece of work with me as well, because I don't want you to be dependent on this stuff for the rest of your life. A, that's freaking expensive. B, there's so many side effects that it just makes you feel like crap for most women, right? Like the gastric side effects, oh my God, gastrointestinal, like upset, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, loss of energy, loss of your spark. Like that's a lot to sacrifice to maintain a certain weight and shape and to keep that food noise pushed down. But you can learn how to do that yourself without having to be dependent on medication. So that's my point of view on that. And I think a really good backup around my point there about what happens when you come off the meds and then you have that fear and the anxiety, so you start restricting again, and that it will always end up back into binging, is in the 1940s. And if you've heard of this, it's amazing, isn't it? And if this is going to be new for you, this is going to blow your mind. So in the 1940s, there was an experiment done, right? It's called the Minnesota Starvation Experiment. And what they did is they took 36 healthy men. So these were men who did not want to participate in the war. And so the government, the US government, were like, hey, cool, great. We're going to run an experiment on you. So it was, if you didn't participate, you would go into prison. But these guys got chosen to do this experiment. And they didn't have any sort of history of disordered eating or eating disorders. They were mentally sound, for the standards they had back in the 1940s. And they put these guys on a semi-starvation diet. So they allowed them to eat 15 to 1600 calories a day. So these are adult men. And within weeks of this restrictive diet, these healthy men became obsessed with food. So symptoms that they reported were dreaming about food. One guy got obsessed with collecting recipe books. One guy was stealing food. And one person actually got kicked out of the study because he was found eating out of the rubbish bin, which, if you're a binge eater, that's something that's really, really common in binge eaters. And of course, one of the symptoms of this study was binge eating. So when they had food, they would have a loss of control and they would overeat. Sometimes they would overeat to the point of feeling ill. And they just lost the ability to concentrate on anything except when the next meal was coming. That's because their bodies went into semi-starvation mode, not because they were weak-willed men or they weren't trying hard enough. And so what this study shows us is that restriction manufactures this food obsession, or what we're calling now as food noise. And it's not your fault. It's not a personality flaw. It is just biology. Your body protecting itself, your body wanting to survive. And the study also demonstrates that when you restrict food, whether that's putting in rules, dieting, eating irregularly, your body will pump out more ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, and it drops leptin, which is the hormone that tells you that you're full. So you've got more hunger hormones, less fullness. Again, sounds really familiar to us binge eaters, right? Is we feel hungry and we're eating past fullness really regularly. Your brain gets louder too. So food just sounds so appealing. You know what it's like when you have that anticipation of a binge, like you start planning it out, you start getting this dopamine hit because you're like, oh, when I get home, I'm going to have the bag of chips and I've got those cookies and I've got that ice cream. You know what I mean? So that kind of stuff gets louder too. Food starts to feel really good and it also starts to feel urgent. It is urgent because you're restricted. Your body is in that starvation mode and it wants you to eat so you can survive. That is exactly what it's meant to do when food's scarce. So, when someone is dieting or under eating or does that thing where they just don't want to think too much about food and then they can't stop thinking about food, that's not proof that they need a drug. That is proof that your body and your brain is responding to some restriction exactly as it's supposed to do. Food noise is some sort of signal or cue from your body that something is off, that either your diet culture conditioning is super heavy and diet culture Doris is being really loud and your binge brain is in control, or it means that it's time to eat. Now, as I was saying before, not sitting here and tell you that every single racing thought about food is fine and dandy and you should just vibe with it forever. No, I'm not saying that. There is a version of this that is distressing and intrusive and doesn't switch off even when you've eaten. And it looks like binge urges. It looks like feeling out of control. It looks like just being in that fight or flight mode all the time. That is real. And that is part of binge eating disorder. It can also be part of restriction or just disordered eating. It can be your nervous system trying to get your attention because something else is going on that actually has nothing to do with food. And so taking something like Ozempic to dull that is completely redundant. And the part that really matters for you is that the fix for that kind of food noise is not going to be less food. It's usually more food. So eating regularly, eating enough, actually meeting your needs instead of white knuckling your way through or away from them all the time. I want you to work out what is underneath that food noise. What is it actually signaling to you? Is it stress, exhaustion, an unmet need, a nervous system that's stuck in overdrive? Is it the diet voice that you've had since you were 12 years old trying to bully and berate you? You've got to deal with that stuff. Otherwise, when we come off those meds, it's just going to swing right back in. So, the next time that your brain goes loud around food, just please don't panic. Don't shame yourself. I just want you to get curious, okay? Get curious and ask yourself these three things. Is this possibly just physical hunger cues? Isn't my body doing its job? Could this be diet culture Doris showing up, having a wee go at me again? Or is this actually an emotional need showing up as a craving? So, emotional hunger. Because, yes, and I've talked about this so many times on the show here, go back and listen to those episodes around emotional hunger because we know that food is fast, it's reliable, it's accessible, and it does give us relief and dopamine and a sense of peace, even if it's just for 3 seconds or 10 minutes, you know? I don't want you to fight this noise for the rest of your life. I want you to understand what it is and learn to tell what that noise is actually saying. Now, before I go today, I want to share something really positive. I want to share some wins from inside the breakup because they're talking about exactly what we've been talking about and they're living and breathing this in real life. And it's so nice. I know it was for me when I was healing and working on my stuff. it was nice to hear from other women who have been in the same struggle and who are in that real messy middle of healing. So, this is some wins from the breakup this week. One of our besties in the program, she just went on a camping trip with a group, and she said that old her would have bought her own separate food, she would have been on a plan, and she usually would have snuck off and binged on her forbidden foods in secret later. But this time, what happened was she actually joined everyone for communal meals, and she ate with the group, and she wasn't hiding, she didn't have a separate plate. That is such a win. That is food freedom in real life, playing out in real time. And this is someone who's only 3 weeks into working with me. How much of a big change is that in just 3 months? 3 months, sorry, 3 weeks. Awesome. Another Bessie, so she's just finished module 3. So that one's all about starting to re nourish our bodies. She has let herself starting to eat carbs again, real carbs, like 4 years. Diet coach Doris, in her binge brain, had convinced her that the one thing she should never do, well, one of many things she should never do, was eat carbs. Don't have more than one kind of carb a day. And if she lets carbs back in, then she's going to lose control. She's going to gain weight. But she's really, really challenged herself, and she has done it anyway, even if it made her uncomfortable, even though she was like, Nick, I don't want to eat carbs. This is scary. I can't do this. And she's just like felt the fear and done it anyway. She's trusting in the process. And now she says she's eating a more varied diet. She's got more energy. She even had more than one type of carb in one day. And her clothes are actually starting to feel more comfortable. So what's happened is her body has responded the second that she stopped fighting it and started working with it. How cool is that? So food noise or diet culture Doris told both of these women the exact same thing. Don't do this. You can't handle it. It'll all go wrong. You're going to lose control. But they did it anyway. They've trusted the process, and now they're getting some pretty incredible results just 3 weeks in to trying something new. And so I'm super, super proud of these two beautiful women. And a final thing I want to share is one lady posted in the forum this week, and she posted a question. You're going to love it. But she said, hey, something I'm asking myself this week, and she wanted everyone in the forum to ask themselves too, which is gorgeous. She said, what if I deserve happiness right now in this body exactly as I am? Isn't that nice? What if I deserve happiness right now in this body exactly as I am? What if? The thing is, she says she's been smaller before. And this is mirrored by so many women's story and mine, being in different shape, size bodies, maybe getting the attention you wanted, maybe feeling a little bit confident for a while. But ultimately, looking back and realizing, even when I was in that body, there was always something else I still felt like I had to fix, always another flaw. And so she said that was kind of like her penny drop moment. I had a penny drop moment exactly like that after I lost 50 kgs, got the dream body, wasn't happy. It was shocking to me because, we just sold this lie. Now I know it's a lie. I sold this lie that being smaller automatically means you'll be happier and that happiness will last. Yes, there's so many positive things about losing weight. Of course, most of them are because the way that society treats you differently. You know, people will look you in the eye, people will offer you opportunities. I'm not going to deny that, and that's screwed up that happens. But yeah, if it's it's just so awesome. I just feel so happy to see these kind of shifts in such a short time for these ladies. So if you want results like that, the breakup is open right now and doors are closing on the 31st. So today is New Zealand time, 27th of August. So you've got a few more days that you can join us. And we have a live kickoff party on the 1st of September where you come along, you and I hang out, and the other girls who are starting at the same time as you. And we go through the whole first module together. we set our intentions, we set our goals, we really, really ground down into why we want to do this work. So head to the show notes to find out how to join me in that. And I also have a free workshop coming up too. So link will be in the show notes for that too. It's called Why You Overeat. And I'm going into the 3 big triggers behind any binge or emotional eating. You can ask me questions, you can meet some of the other gals, you can learn more about the breakup. And of course, you'll be getting some free tools from my program while you're there. So you're invited. Come along if you can. And that is us for the week. So I hope this has been super helpful for the next time that you see a little ad promising you to switch off that food noise. When that happens, because it will, I want you to remember this episode. Ask what is actually being sold, a quiet brain or a smaller you. And remember that your body was never the problem. It was trying to talk to you, it's trying to survive. And this is not something to be scared of, not something to pathologize. This is something to celebrate, something to embrace without fear. So if this hits home, send it to a bestie who's quietly been Googling this exact thing at 11 p.m. at night, or save it for yourself. And I will see you next week. Ciao.
All right, besties, that's a wrap for today. If you want to go deeper, check out the links in my show notes. You're going to find free resources, ways we can work together, and more details on my signature program, The Breakup. This is your roadmap to help you to break free from binge and emotional eating for good. If this episode has helped you, please hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you're feeling extra kind, leaving a quick review really helps this podcast to reach more women who need it. Take care of your beautiful self, bestie, and I'll see you in the next episode. Ciao.